World War I was basically a fight between a finance capital countries, Britain and France, arming to prevent what they thought was a threat, and that was a threat of socialism, specifically state socialism of Germany and Central Europe. What made Germany and Central Europe different from England, the United States, and France was that there was a unity between the government, heavy industry, very largely based on armaments and building ships and a navy, and banking. And the difference between German banking and Central European banking and English banking was the difference between short-term and long-term. The government representatives and the bankers would get together with the industry and say, how much credit do you need to grow? When German banks would invest in a company, they, unlike the British banks, they would not ask all your dividends should be paid out quickly. They'd say, don't pay out the dividends to investors. We don't want the dividends. We want your company to grow and to take our gain in the form of capital accumulation. By contrast, in 1914, the British financial press began to publish warnings saying they feared England would lose the war to Germany because of financing. Its banks wanted quick payouts. The stock market was hit and run. It was basically rife with fraud, and the stock market people would put investors into a company and then just sort of leave it there. There was no long-term growth and no work between government and finance and industry together. That was what they called the free market. Germany realized that to develop, it had to do just what the United States did, and what I described in America's protectionist payoff. You need the government to invest in basic infrastructure to lower the cost of doing business. That if the government would run your transportation system, your telephone system, your communication system, it could provide services at cost or at a subsidized basis or freely. Public health, health care, medicine, all of this was viewed as a capitalist policy, and at that time people thought that industrial capitalism was going to evolve into socialism of one form or another. There were many kinds of socialism. There was state socialism in Germany, run by the heavy industry. There was anarchic socialism. There was Marxian socialism. There was the old-fashioned David Ricardo, John Stuart Mill land tax socialism to free capitalism from the landlord class. Everybody before World War I believed that the tendency in every country was for government to play a larger role. And the general word for this was socialism. And the main supporters were capitalists, because the capitalists wanted the government to subsidize their development, to lower the cost of doing business, lower the cost of living, and if the government would provide medical care, a healthy population, then employers could pay their workforce less because they wouldn't have to pay for the labor force paying all these higher costs. Well, it seemed to be that Germany, as an economic system, was destined to dominate the Anglo-American countries. And what that meant was there was a struggle between two different kinds of capitalism, between industrial capitalism of the German model and the finance capitalism of the Anglo-American model. What changed matters, of course, was that the United States entered the war on the side of England, largely because the American financial system had changed away from industrialization towards the British system. And the day just before America entered the war, J.P. Morgan went to the White House and convinced the President Wilson that indeed we had lent so much money to England to buy armaments that if we were going to collect the money that England owed us, that we sold them on credit, we would have to go to war and make sure that it won so it would have enough money to pay the American arms exporters. I go over the story in great detail in Super Imperialism.